Allison had always enjoyed wandering through quiet places, especially late in the afternoon when the world seemed to soften. On a cloudy Wednesday, with nothing pressing to do, she walked into a small antique bookstore on the corner of Grantham Street. The sign above the door was fading, its paint peeling in thin curls, and the display window held books so old their titles had long disappeared from the spines. Inside, the shop smelled of dust, slow time, and dry paper. There was no music, no chatter, only the gentle hum of a ceiling fan and the occasional rustle of pages as the old man behind the counter sorted through a stack of hardcovers. Allison didn't know what she was looking for. She rarely did. She liked letting books find her instead of the other way around. She wandered between the tall shelves, running her fingers over cracked leather covers and gold-embossed letters. Some books seemed untouched for decades. Then she saw it. A thin black hardcover tucked unevenly between two larger volumes. There was no title on the spine, only a faint silver mark shaped like a crescent moon. Something about its simplicity drew her in. She pulled it free, and a small cloud of dust drifted into the air. The book felt colder than the others. She opened it carefully. The pages were thick and slightly yellowed, the text printed in a clean serif font. But what caught her attention wasn't the writing, it was the single, long hair lying across the page. A pale, silvery strand, almost white, stretching from one margin to the other. Allison brushed it away without thinking. It drifted off her fingertip and disappeared. She turned another page. The story was written in a soothing, measured tone, almost hypnotic. It wasn't clear what genre it was, not quite a diary, not quite a novel, but something in between. A voice telling a story directly to whoever opened the book. She felt a strange calm reading it, as though the words shaped themselves around her breathing. "All right," she whispered to herself, "you're coming home with me." The old man at the counter barely looked up when she approached. "You find something you like?" he asked softly. "I think so," she said, showing him the slim black book. His expression shifted for a moment. Not surprise, something gentler, a quiet recognition. "That one," he murmured, "has been here a long time." "Is it rare?" she asked. "I'm not sure rare is the word," he replied, "but it's not a book most people notice." As Allison reached for her wallet, another pale strand of hair fell from between the pages and landed on the counter. "Oh," she laughed lightly, "I think it's shedding." The old man didn't laugh with her. He simply brushed the hair aside with an uneasy flick of his hand. "Take care of it," he said. She wasn't sure if he meant the book or herself. That night, rain tapped softly against Allison's apartment windows. She made a cup of tea, dimmed the lights, and set the book on her bedside table. The storm outside was gentle, the kind of weather she loved, the kind that made the world feel smaller and cozier. She climbed into bed and opened the black book again. A hair fell onto her blanket. This one was different. It was longer, much longer, and darker. as though it belonged to someone else entirely. She frowned slightly. Maybe it had been caught between pages deeper inside the book and fallen out just now. She set it aside and began reading. The story inside was strangely soothing. The narrator spoke of familiar things, quiet rooms, soft footsteps, the comfort of being alone, yet not lonely. The rhythm of the writing eased her mind, slowing her breath, pulling her deeper into the atmosphere of the story. Then, a faint sound. A whisper of movement. Allison looked up. The apartment was still, illuminated only by her bedside lamp. The rain continued outside. Nothing was out of place. She returned to the page. Halfway down, she noticed something odd. A faint indentation across one paragraph, as if a strand of hair had once rested on it long enough to leave a mark. She touched the line with her fingertip. The page felt slightly uneven. She turned to the next page. Another hair. This one was curled, almost as if it had been damp when it dried. Her chest tightened slightly. The book was old. Maybe it had been stored improperly. Maybe the previous owner had long, shedding hair. Nothing unusual. Still, something felt strange. She checked inside the back cover. A thin line of pale hair was pressed into the inner spine, as though deliberately tucked there. She closed the book slowly. "That's enough for tonight," she whispered to herself. She set it on the bedside table again. The lamp felt brighter than before. The room quieter, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made small sounds seem louder. She reached to switch off the lamp. Then she froze. A single strand of hair lay across her pillow, long, pale, and undisputedly fresh. She hadn't seen it before. It hadn't been there. She stared at it for several seconds, her heartbeat steady but heavy. She picked it up carefully, holding it by one end. It was cold, softer than she expected, and far too long to have come from her. "All right," she whispered, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "You're imagining things." She turned off the lamp and laid down. The room settled. The rain softened, and in the darkness, just before sleep took her, Allison heard something she couldn't quite name. A faint, gentle rustle.
The next morning, Allison awoke to a soft drizzle tapping against her window. Sunlight filtered through gray clouds, painting the room in pale silver. She glanced at the black book on her bedside table. Nothing had moved. The hair from the night before was gone. Had it been a dream? She poured herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, cradling the warm mug. Her mind kept wandering back to the book, to the delicate, mysterious strands. She could not resist. After breakfast, she opened the cover once more. This time, the pages seemed softer, as if welcoming her touch. The text flowed gently, almost hypnotically. She read slowly, savoring each line. The story began with a woman living alone in a small village by the sea. Her days were quiet, filled with simple routines, arranging flowers, tending to books, and watching the waves crash onto the rocks below. The narrative was calm, almost like a lullaby in words. Allison felt herself drifting along with the rhythm, her mind light and serene. As she reached the middle of the chapter, a hair fell on the page. Not long, not pale, a soft brown, almost blending with the page's edges. Allison held it carefully. It was warm. For a moment, she froze. That warmth made her pulse slow, her thoughts deepen into stillness. She read on. The story described the women's evening routine, lighting a single candle, pulling the curtains, and letting the night's quiet fill the room. Allison realized that the words mirrored her own apartment. The gentle light, the rain outside, even the faint sound of the ceiling fan. By noon, Allison was deeply immersed. She had forgotten the world beyond her room. The book had become a companion, a soft presence that did not demand anything but attention. A soft rustle broke her focus. She looked around. The apartment was unchanged. The rain continued its gentle rhythm. The book lay open, the page turning slightly, as if moved by a breeze she could not feel. She leaned closer. The text now spoke directly to her, about quiet rooms, the way shadows fall at dusk, the comfort of warm blankets, and the gentle sound of distant water. Each sentence lingered longer than the last, inviting her to pause, breathe, and sink deeper into calm. Hours passed. The world outside faded, leaving only the soft hum of rain and the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. She read, turning pages carefully, aware that with every turn, the book seemed to breathe with her. By evening, Allison noticed another hair, this one silver, lying across a paragraph about the woman's dreams. She picked it up and studied it. It was fine, silky and delicate. Unlike the first few, this one did not seem to belong to anyone she knew. She pressed it gently between her fingers and held it near her face. A faint scent, like old paper, mixed with a subtle floral note, drifted from it. The kind of smell that felt familiar, yet impossible to place. Allison's thoughts slowed. The story continued. The woman in the village had discovered a small, hidden alcove in her bedroom. She would sit there every evening, surrounded by candles and books, listening to the night. Allison felt a shiver of recognition. That was exactly where she was now. Her own bedside lamp, her cozy chair, the rain tapping outside. By twilight, she read the last lines of the chapter. The woman leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and let the quiet of the night envelop her. Allison mirrored the motion, placing the book aside for a moment, breathing in the calm, letting her mind sink into serenity. And then she noticed movement, barely perceptible, just a slight flick at the corner of her eye. The book's pages shifted, turning softly, as if inviting her to continue. She leaned closer, her hand resting lightly on the cover. A new hair had appeared, this one black, long, and curled at the end. She held it carefully, tracing its length. She felt a strange calm, a connection, as if the book was aware of her, aware she was listening. The rain slowed outside. Twilight deepened, and the apartment was wrapped in soft gray shadows. She knew she would continue reading, not out of curiosity, not out of habit, but because the book had become part of her nights, part of the quiet rhythm that guided her toward rest. She whispered softly to herself, "Just one more chapter." And as the words of the story settled over her, her eyes grew heavy. The apartment was still, the rain gentle, the book alive in silence. Allison let herself drift with it, her body relaxing, her mind surrendering to the calm of the story, the cozy bedroom, and the slow, steady passage of time.
Night had fully settled outside Allison's apartment. The rain had softened into a gentle patter, almost like the whisper of fingers tracing over a window pane. The city lights blurred into a hazy glow, and inside, the apartment felt smaller, warmer, and more secluded from the world beyond. Allison returned to her bedside, the black book lying open where she had left it. The long black hair she had found earlier still rested gently across the page, untouched by time or motion. She held it between her fingers, marveling at how delicate it was. It felt almost aware. She resumed reading, and the story shifted subtly. The woman in the village, the book's protagonist, discovered that her quiet bedroom hid secrets she had never noticed. Behind the heavy curtains and beneath the floorboards, small objects seemed to hum with history. Each candle she lit cast shadows that hinted at movement, though no one was there. Allison's breath slowed as she read. The narrative was hypnotic. Every word seemed to echo her own surroundings. The soft creak of the floorboards, the low hum of the heater, the faint sigh of wind against a window. She felt herself drawn deeper, her eyes moving with a calm rhythm across the pages. Then, almost imperceptibly, the hair quivered in her hand. Not violently, just a soft, slight twitch, like a finger brushing lightly over skin. Allison froze. Her heart did not race. It merely slowed, steady and aware. She set the hair on the table and watched. The book seemed normal, yet impossible things had begun to unfold. A new passage appeared where none had existed before, words forming as she watched. She is watching. She knows you are listening. Be patient, be still, and all will be revealed. Allison's eyes widened slightly. She leaned closer. The words shimmered faintly, almost like the silver of the first hair. There was no trembling, No threat, only a strange invitation, a gentle insistence. She turned the page. Another hair appeared, longer, paler, coiled delicately across the words. The story continued. In the quiet moments, when the world fades and shadows stretch long, she moves among the pages, a presence soft and silk, unseen but close. Allison set the book down again. Her fingers tingled from the subtle energy that seemed to radiate from it. She could feel the story, the hairs, and the narrative all connected to something beyond comprehension. Yet there was no fear, only a calm, deep focus, as though the book and the room had merged into one quiet, living moment. Hours passed. The clock ticked softly, each second stretching into tranquility. Allison's eyelids grew heavy, but her curiosity held her, tethered gently to the book. She continued reading, discovering the protagonist's routine, sitting in a small alcove, running her fingers across the spines of old books, listening to the night, waiting. Waiting for what? Allison didn't know, but she sensed the anticipation, the slow, deliberate rhythm of the story's life. Then she noticed movement again. A shadow, slight and deliberate, shifted across the room. It was subtle, easily dismissed, but Allison's mind was now attuned to these quiet signals. She did not startle, she only observed, calm and present. The story's narrative deepened. She leaves traces of herself, hair, whispers, a warmth in the air. She seeks those who will notice, who will read, who will understand. She is not malicious, she is patient. Allison ran her fingers along the page. The hair she had found earlier seemed to pulse faintly under her touch, almost like it was alive. She felt a connection she could not explain, a gentle pull towards understanding, towards unraveling the mystery quietly, piece by piece. The rain outside lessened, and the night became heavier. Yet the apartment seemed brighter, warmer, and intimate in a way that was difficult to describe. The book was no longer a simple collection of words. It was a companion, a guide, a silent presence that had entered her life and asked nothing but attention and care. Finally, Allison closed her eyes, resting her forehead lightly on the table. Her breathing synchronized with the soft rhythm of the story, the slow tapping of rain against the window, the gentle whispers of a presence that was neither threatening nor fully known. And as she drifted closer to sleep, she knew she would continue reading. She would follow the story wherever it led, gently, calmly, and always within the warmth of her cozy bedroom.
The following night, Allison returned to her bedroom earlier than usual. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets outside glistening under the soft glow of the streetlights. The air inside her apartment smelled faintly of damp paper and warm tea, comforting and familiar. She placed the black book on her lap and opened it, carefully, as though the pages themselves might shatter if handled roughly. From the first page, the story seemed to notice her. The words moved with her gaze, phrases elongating just enough to slow her reading.
guiding her attention, settling her mind. She felt herself blending into the narrative, part of the room, part of the story. The woman in the village had discovered a hidden drawer beneath her writing desk. Within it lay delicate, silken strands of hair, each one carefully arranged. They were collected over decades, each telling a story, each carrying a memory. Allison ran her fingers across the page where the hair illustration lay, marveling at how real it seemed. Then she felt it, a soft tickle across her arm. Not startling, just enough to make her aware. She looked down. The book was still in her lap, the hairs pressed between the pages, yet one strand seemed to have extended slightly beyond the margin, brushing her skin ever so lightly. Allison's heart did not race. Instead, a calm curiosity settled in its place. The story spoke to her directly, more insistently now. You are not alone. She has been waiting. Follow gently, and you will understand. She read on. The protagonist's nights were filled with soft routines, arranging candles, lining up small trinkets, tracing letters in old journals. Each night, the hair she kept in the drawer seemed to move slightly, almost as if it was alive, reaching for someone who could notice, someone patient enough to watch and wait. Allison felt a kinship. The presence in the book was no longer a distant mystery. It seemed aware of her, welcoming her, inviting her to follow the quiet rhythm of its life. Another hair appeared on the page, pale and curling delicately, almost like a question posed to her. She leaned closer to the book. The narrative shifted. The woman in the village had begun speaking in whispers, soft murmurs that were meant for someone who truly listened. Patience is the key. Observation is the gift. The one who reads will see the truth hidden in the strands. Allison's mind was completely absorbed. She felt the hours melt away as she followed each sentence, each description of the hidden alcove, the delicate hairs, the soft nighttime rituals. The room itself seemed to breathe with her, the shadows deepening yet comforting, the gentle hum of the heater, a soft anchor. At one point, she noticed movement at the edge of her vision again. A shadow, subtle and fluid, moved behind her chair. She turned slowly. The room was empty. Yet, the hairs on the page now seemed to shimmer faintly, almost acknowledging her awareness. The story began to weave a deeper connection. The protagonist's past became clearer. She had collected these hairs not out of obsession, but as a form of memory, a preservation of fleeting lives, moments she could never forget. Allison felt the weight of this quiet devotion, the patience, the care. And then, unexpectedly, the book shifted slightly in her hands. The pages seemed to hum softly, almost audibly, like a soft exhale. A new hair, long and silver, appeared across a paragraph describing the woman's final, most secret alcove. Allison traced it gently. It felt warmer than the others, almost alive. The narrative invited her further. You see now. You understand. The one who listens is part of the story. Allison leaned back against her pillows, holding the book lightly. The warmth of the hairs, the gentle rhythm of the story, the quiet of the night, it all blended into a sensation that was almost like floating. And in that calm, Allison understood that the book was no ordinary story. It was a companion, a guide, a presence that required patience, attention, and quiet observation. Each hair, each word, each soft whisper of narrative was a step closer to understanding, a step deeper into the cozy rhythm of the bedroom, the slow unfolding of mysteries held in delicate strands. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the soft ambient sounds of the apartment and the memory of the story settle over her. The book remained in her lap, warm, alive, patiently waiting for her to continue. Allison knew she would read again tonight, and the night after. The book had chosen her, gently, quietly, and she was ready to follow. The night had deepened into stillness. Allison's apartment felt suspended in time, each shadow soft and steady. The rain had stopped entirely, leaving a faint scent of wet pavement drifting through the slightly open window. She cradled the black book in her lap, the long silver hair resting across the page like a quiet guide. She opened the book, and the story now spoke to her as though it knew her completely. The woman in the village, the one who had collected the hair for decades, had left messages hidden throughout the book for someone who would truly see them, someone patient enough to notice, gentle enough to follow without fear. The one who reads knows the story is more than words. It is life, preserved in strands, in memory, in quiet observation. She waits in the space between sentences, watching for the one who listens. Allison traced the word slowly. Her fingers brushed the hair. It felt alive, soft and warm, pulsing faintly under her touch. The room itself seemed to lean closer, as if waiting with her, sharing in the quiet rhythm of discovery. The story described the final alcove in the woman's bedroom, a hidden niche beneath a loose floorboard, where she had placed her most cherished strands. Each one represented a memory, a connection to someone or something lost, preserved carefully over time. Allison understood, slowly and gently. The hairs in the book were not merely remnants. They were invitations. They sought attention, observation, and calm understanding. There were fragments of life, soft and patient, waiting for a listener. She felt the urge to open the drawer beneath her own desk, almost instinctively. It was empty, but the act of reaching, the intention itself, felt significant. The connection was not about possession. It was about attention, presence, and care. "You are part of this now," the book whispered, almost audibly, though the apartment remained still. "You observe, you listen, you understand, and through understanding, you are at peace." Allison felt her chest relax entirely. The hairs, the story, the quiet apartment, they merged into one harmonious experience. No fear lingered, only gentle curiosity, calm observation, and deep, comforting presence. She leaned back, closing the book lightly on her lap. For the first time, she felt a quiet smile. The story had reached its conclusion for now, yet it promised more if she chose to continue. She didn't need answers immediately. The beauty was in the patience, and letting the quiet weave around her like a soft blanket. A final hair, silver and delicate, rested on the page where she had stopped. Allison touched it lightly, imagining the hands that had placed it there, the decades of quiet devotion, the unspoken lives preserved within each strand. The room hummed softly, her breathing slowed, matching the rhythm of the story and the lingering presence of the book. Allison let herself drift into the gentle night, cocooned in warmth, mystery, and comfort. And as her eyelids closed fully, the last thought in her mind was serene. She was not alone. She was part of the story, part of the calm, part of the quiet life that the Black Book had offered. A life filled with patience, observation, and gentle presence. The night held her softly. The book rested nearby, and the world beyond the apartment faded into a peaceful hush. Allison slept, guided by the strands of memory, the words of the story, and the quiet heartbeat of a cozy bedroom. Safe, calm, and whole yet peace.